It's Ashley, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite Grumpy Sunshine romance books. Let's get started with a book I just finished last night, and that is Bittersweet by Sarina Bowen. Bittersweet is more sweet than bitter, I promise you. It is the story of Audrey, who flunked out of college twice, not once, but twice. And she ends up finding her way to culinary school where she does really well, and it is now her dream to open up her own restaurant. She gets hired for a big restaurant group out of Boston and is basically fired 2 times in a row from different tasks and jobs they give her. And now it's kind of like third strike and you're out. So she has been tasked with going out to some farms in Vermont and sourcing some produce for the restaurants so they can do a farm to table type thing. And who does she meet but the grumpy farmer Griffin, who she knows from college because they had several steamy nights together but never ended up dating. Now, Griffin is a former football star. It was his dream to make the NFL draft. Unfortunately, his father died early at the age of 49, and so he goes back to his family's farm where he is basically running things, and his passion is cider brewing. So he grows some special apples and makes some special blends of organic cider. Let me tell you, while I was reading this book, I got the most intense craving to crack open a cold bottle of cider, like a dry cider, a nice crisp dry cider. I really love it, and I find you can drink it at any time of year. So the two of them are kind of bartering over prices. You see immediately that they both have this intense sexual attraction to one another. And what I also like about this book, beyond the chemistry between our two main characters, is all the side characters. On the farm, we have an ex-drug addict who's just gotten out of jail, and he is trying to basically stay clean while working on the farm. We have a really quiet, shy farmhand who has never had sex before, and he just works so hard day in, day out, and he's the perfect gentleman. We have Griffin's family, so his mom, his sister, and his twin brother and sister. And then we also have Zara, the grumpy barkeep, who was formerly with Griffin and now has to deal with the fact that she's seeing Griffin pursue Audrey. So there's lots of characters in there for you to love. There's also lots of books in this series. I believe the series is called True North, and this is book 1, all set in Vermont. If you like yourself a lumbersexual, then this is the book for you. It's a very easy read. I read it really quickly. And if you enjoy books that have kind of like a culinary aspect in it, I think you would really like this one. Okay, my next one is the popular book by Emily Henry called Beach Read. Now, contrary to the title, this book actually takes place more in winter than it does in summer, so I think it's actually a perfect read for right now, as opposed to waiting and reading it in the summer, as though it is a beach read, so that's a bit confusing, but you've heard it from me. Read it in the winter rather than the summer. We have our main character, January, who has just lost her father, and she's moving to his beach house where she is struggling with the fact that he had an affair while he was married to her mother, and he's gone and she can't be with him anymore. And she's also supposed to be writing. She is a writer, and when she was in college, she was in the same creative writing program as Augustus. And Augustus was the polar opposite of her. Whereas he was trying to write the next great American novel, she was all about the romance novels. And she moves into this beach house, and who lives next door but Augustus? He is in the area because he is researching a death cult, a suicide cult, and he wants to write about this. Now, they strike up a conversation where basically she dares him to write a romance novel, he dares her to write a more serious novel, and what they decide is that she will take him on rom-com style dates and outings, and he will take her with him to interview the survivors of this suicide cult. And I have to say, I really liked this book. I liked it more than I liked People We Meet on Vacation. I found the relationship with her father and the things she was going through with that was very compelling. I liked the banter between Augustus and January, and I really enjoyed their relationship unfolding. I also really liked that this was like a story within a story within a story, because you're also getting the book that he's writing as well as the book that she's writing. So there's some really interesting stories there. And there's this one part in the book where they're kind of going back and forth, and he's saying, well, what if this happens to characters? And she writes, just speaks out what it would be like if she wrote that as a romance. And he's, speaking back of, how would it be as a tragedy? And it's just a really cool banter between the two of them. If you feel like a book about writers who fall in love, then Beach Read is the one for you. The next book I want to talk to you about is one that a lot of booktubers and bookstagrammers put on their favorite book of 2021 list, and that is All Roads Lead Here. And Rhodes is spelled like the last name of our main character, Rhodes. This book is set in Colorado, and it follows Aurora, who is fresh off of a 14-year relationship. She's broken up with her previous partner. He was a country singer who wanted to maintain the image of being single and available, and so she basically was with him, but the entire time hiding the fact that they were together whenever they were in public. In fact, he even went on some fake dates, and she has just had enough of him, so she's left. She's got a bunch of money in the bank, but she doesn't care about that money. What she wants to do is reconnect with the memories she has of her mother. So she goes back to the place she last lived with her mother. Her mother has passed away. Her mother was an avid hiker, and so she has her mother's hiking journals, and she's going on several hikes that her mother did. And she moves into a rental apartment above a garage. Now, this apartment wasn't supposed to be rented out, but Amos, son of our main character Rhodes, had rented it out to her because he thought his dad was going to be away, and he wanted to get some extra money so that he could buy a new guitar. Now, if you like a longer book, this is the one for you. It is a slow burn. It is definitely Grumpy Sunshine. Our main character is very slow and cautious about his relationship with Aurora, but there is definitely a sweet payoff. I love the relationship between Aurora and Rhodes' son. I love the relationship between Rhodes and his son. And I loved the environment and setting of Colorado. You get Colorado in a number of different seasons. And you get someone who's basically realizing that she didn't have a healthy love before, but she's found one now. She also is reconnecting with memories of her mother and dealing with the loss of her mother, and there's kind of a found family aspect. So if you like found family trope as well, you would really like this one. I do warn you, this is a Mariana Zapata book, and they tend to be very long, and this one is no exception. It is long, but I didn't find that it was too slow. I think sometimes I felt like, okay, can we speed it up a bit? But it was a nice unfolding of the relationship, like a very realistic pacing for relationships. I find in romance novels sometimes people get together much more quickly than they would, say, in real life. But this one is definitely more of a pace that's true to real life. That is All Roads Lead Here. Okay, my next book was a 5-star read, and that is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This book takes place in Alaska, and our main character initially is living in Toronto, but she was born in Alaska. Her mother fell in love with an Alaskan bush pilot and tried to live in rural Alaska with him, but it just was not for her, so she moves to Toronto and has since remarried. Our main character gets a phone call from someone in Alaska that says that her father is sick, so she decides to take this opportunity, since she's just been fired and is sort of between jobs right now, to go out to Alaska and see if she can reconnect with her father. She has a lot of hard feelings towards him because he never flew out for her grade 8 graduation, for example. He's never been a presence in her life, and she's not 100% sure why that is. All they've really had is a relationship through phone calls. She knows her mother has some very fond memories of him, but she doesn't really feel connected to him. So she's going out to try to connect with him. And who picks her up at the airport in a very teeny tiny plane? None other than the sexy Jonah. He is our grump. He right away decides he's going to test her and push her buttons and see if this city slicker can handle rural Alaska. He is an interesting character because he has a lot of baggage. He lost his father as well, and he also is very close with our main character's father. So there's a lot going on in terms of him trying to get her to live the Alaskan way and see the beauty of life in rural Alaska. He at one point steals all her clothes, he steals all her fancy makeup. He really says how she's more beautiful without makeup on. He really likes the more simple things, and he lives with like this giant bookshelf, but he has no internet, no TV. Life is very simple. He has like a pet raccoon, and he's just really charming. Like, she comes to discover maybe she doesn't need this big bustling city life, and maybe the things that she thought she cared about aren't actually the most important things to her. She also heals in terms of her relationship with her father. There's a lot of self-discovery in this book. As I said, it was a 5-star read for me. Jonah, the sexy Alaskan plane flying cowboy, is just such an endearing character. He's always like flying medical supplies to people and flying to like save hikers, and there's a cabin scene where they're stuck together in a cabin. It's a really great book. It's a really just lovely, heartwarming read. And I have a soft spot for books set in the far north. So if that feels like something you want to read right now, I think give it a go. Like, I like reading about books where they're in more remote places that are kind of colder and there's a lot of wilderness. I think that's the perfect background for romance, and it's also the perfect background for books to read right now. I don't know if you're in the northern hemisphere like myself. I'm in snowy Canada, and we have a ton of snow outside. It's frigid. I think it's like -18 outside. That is Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's cold. And this is the perfect book to read when it's cold outside. My last book made it onto my top books of the year for 2021, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book, so it started off, the author was writing Reylo fan fiction, so that's Kylo Ren and Rey from Star Wars, and so the characters are based on, like, the physique of the characters is based on those two actors. However, this book actually takes place in the context of a university, specifically a professor of science who runs a lab and a PhD student. Now, our PhD student, Olive, she is trying to convince her best friend to go out with this guy. Now, Olive previously dated this guy for just a really short period, but she sees how much her best friend gets along with him, and she wants her best friend to go for it. No hard feelings. Her best friend, out of loyalty, is holding off. So what she does is grab this random sexy professor and kiss him in front of her best friend, so that her best friend will now feel comfortable going after this ex of Olive's. Now, it turns out that they end up agreeing, her and the sexy professor end up agreeing to a fake dating arrangement. If you like books with fake dating, this is perfect for you. He needs some funds released by the university, but the university won't do that because they're worried he's going to leave them for another school placement. So they're holding back his funds, and he wants to convince them that he's putting down roots. So what he does is agree to fake date Olive, so they'll think, oh, he has a girlfriend, he's putting down roots in the community, and in return, he's going to make sure that Olive's friend sees them together a bunch of times. They have these really cute coffee dates. There's also a lot in this book about the struggles of women in science, women in STEM. And the author is actually a PhD, I believe, in biology. So she writes from a firsthand perspective, having some firsthand experience in the science community as a woman. And it's just a really great, cute read. I'm really looking forward to Ali Hazelwood's next book, which is going to come out this year. If you feel like the quintessential Grumpy Sunshine, but taking place in an academic setting, then that one's for you. Okay, those are my favorite Grumpy Sunshine books. Great books to read when it's snowy and cold outside, but great books to read really at any time. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, if you could take a moment to subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. In the meantime, happy reading. This is Ashley saying goodbye.